Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Mic Drop Show, where we bring clarity and structure to real estate and financial strategy. Hey, I'm your host. I'm Mike Morawski, and every Wednesday at 7:30 Pacific, 9:30 Central, we take a closer look at the framework that actually protects investors. Today's episode is about real estate specifically. And no mistake, that shows up after people think they've already won. You know, in real estate, people spend an incredible amount of energy asking the wrong questions. They ask questions like, is this a good property? Is this a good deal? You know, that question sounds reasonable, right? It's also how investors walk straight into long term exposure that they just don't understand, because real estate doesn't fail all at once. It happens over time. It fails slowly, quietly. You know, there's a belief that a strong asset protects weak structure. Good location, solid tenants, decent cash flow. You know, not necessarily always true. People assume that if the property performs, everything else will sort itself out. You know, that assumption alone can be dangerous. Real estate risk, it rarely comes from the building. It comes from ownership design, debt alignment, and exit friction. You know, things that don't show up on a listing sheet or on a pro forma. You can own a great property, but still get boxed in and have a bad outcome. How does this happen? When real estate breaks, it doesn't announce itself. And it doesn't just happen instantaneously, it shows up over time. You know, it shows up as capital that you can't access. You know, you ever heard the expression that I'm rich in real estate, but broke in capital or broke in cash flow? You know, some decisions you make just can't be reversed. Timelines don't control. You know, obligations that outlive the opportunity. The asset keeps working, the structure starts tightening up. And by the time investors realize the issue, the problem isn't the market. It's been self-created. You know, this is why experienced investors don't talk about deals the way beginners do. They don't lead with returns, they lead with control. Knowing real estate isn't the same as knowing risk inside the real estate. Most investors believe that once they understand cap rates, rents, appreciation, that they're prepared. And really, they're not. Because real estate punishes people who understand assets, but underestimate entanglement. And this is where do it yourself logic becomes expensive. You know, have you ever tried to do something and, you know, it cost you more time, which in itself is money, would cost you more money? It becomes expensive. You can't think your way out of structure. You didn't think through it in the same way. You know, inside my free masterclass, I walk through how experienced investors can evaluate real estate before they ever care about the property itself. You know, specifically how they assess control, flexibility, and long-term exposure, not just tactics, not just context, not just more education, you know, but actual action. Real estate rewards patience, you know, long-term vision, but only when patience is supported by a structure that is a sound structure. A good property doesn't save a bad setup. It just delays the consequences, right? That's all for that's all for this episode of the Mic Drop Show. Remember, understanding is just the first step. Structure is what keeps you safe. I walked through the full context inside the free masterclass coming up. Thanks for joining me this morning, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 7:30 Pacific and 9:30 Central. Have a good week, everybody.